Hi, I'm Stacy of Stacy Creates Stuff. Welcome to my Block of the Week series, Patching the Hole in the Barn Door. This week, it's all about the hexagon. If you've never tried English paper piecing, well, this is your chance. And I promise it's fun, it's easy. And I'm going to take you through step by step. This week I have chosen yellow and purple as the colors for my flower. I do have a little pink flower over here on the side, just as a nice little reference for where we're heading with this project. In the written instructions, which are available if you join my email list, link is in the description below, I say to cut a 2.5-inch strip or 2.5-inch squares for each of the petals and the center of the flower. But you can also just take a whack out of a piece of fabric, roughly using a hexagon as a template. You want to make sure that it's at least 1/4 inch all the way around. From the purple, I did cut out a 2.5-inch strip, and I'm going to go ahead and place 6 hexagons along here. Now, if you are wondering where to get hexagons, if you are part of the email list that already received the instructions, you will have gotten a template on the instructions and also a whole sheet that you could copy onto cardstock or print onto cardstock and then just cut those out. The other day, I did release a video on how to use your Cricut machine to cut out hexagons. Very simple. You don't even need to draw the hexagon. There's a hexagon shape right in Cricut Design Space. And I'm sure the same holds true for other cutting machines, design software. In the Shapes menu, there is probably a hexagon. These hexagons are 2-inch diameter, so 2 inches from edge to, well, from corner to opposite corner. And that means it is a 1-inch radius, so 1 inch from the center to one of the points. That also means that that is 1 inch along the top edge. So I have seen this size hexagon referred to as a 1-inch hexagon. I've also seen it referred to as a 2-inch. So just know that it is 1 inch on any one of the sides. You can see there against the matte lines. And it is 2 inches from point to point. So its widest dimension is 2 inches. That is the size that we are using because the flower, when put together, will fit on a 6.5-inch square. And yes, this is a hand stitching project, but have no fear. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's start with the yellow one since I only need to do one of those. Now you can take a glue stick and just put a little dab of glue onto your template and hold it down. I typically don't use glue. I guess I like to live dangerously. But you're also going to need a needle and thread for basting. And I usually use a quilting weight thread. It can be regular sewing weight thread. I happen to have some white here. And I'm just going to thread this onto a nice sturdy sewing needle. I have no idea what size this one is. If you wish, you can knot it in one end. I usually do just to make it a little easier on myself so I don't accidentally pull it through. It is not necessary. So I have threaded my needle. Again, you can tack that down with just, you don't need to glue it down heavily, just enough to hold the fabric in place. And then you're going to start on one edge. I have the template on the wrong side of the fabric. There's the right side. I'm going to fold down one edge and just about 1/8 inch or so from the edge there. I'm just going to do a running stitch. And when I'm ready for the next side, I just fold that over. And I'm piercing all the way through the fabric and the template. And if you've never done English paper piecing, you are probably wondering, how the heck are you going to get that out? Have no fear. I'm going to show you. You do not have to make terribly small stitches. They could be nice big stitches. I like to make sure that I'm going through where it folds over. And I'm also making sure that along the way that I don't let my, especially since I didn't glue it down, that I didn't let my template get too close to the edge of the fabric. Also be careful not to stab yourself. All right, as we come to the end, then this last side just folds right over. Doesn't really matter if you end on the top or the bottom of the piece. There we go. I do not cut my thread. I get ready to string on the next. So let me show you how that goes. And I'm just going to keep going until I have a total of 6 of the purple. Those are going to be my petals. And if you get towards the end of your thread, just thread your needle again and keep on going. If you find that your hexagons are getting tangled in each other, you can cut them apart. Just leave a couple inches of a tail from your thread. The hexagons are reusable, but for this particular project, you will need at least 7. Well, you will need 7, which is how many there are. All right, I have all of my pieces. 6 purple hexagons and a bright yellow center. So now let's put them together. I'm going to go ahead and just cut off this last one here. Cut those apart as well. So now I have 2 hexagons that I'm going to sew together. Just show you how these all lay out. You can cut all your string pieces apart. There we go. Now this has some kind of wacky fabric, so I may want to just arrange or just let them go however they'll turn out. And you can see that they are not precise on the other side. Some have a little more fabric, some a little less. It doesn't matter because on the correct side, the right side, they look great. Now I like to sew mine together with silk thread. This is YLI silk thread. You can use regular sewing thread. That is perfectly fine. I use a straw needle. I do know which one this is because it's very fine. You can use a regular sewing needle. This is just after years of making these, what I prefer. Silk thread is very, very fine. practically invisible. I am using it's kind of like a khaki green color. Because it is so fine, you need a pretty good knot. So you may have to make several stacked knots there to have enough of a knot that will prevent it from going through the fabric. All right, finally my thread is knotted. I'm going to take a center and a petal, and you can put them right sides together. I have seen people do this with wrong sides together as well. I like doing it with right sides together. And I am going to go into a corner on my center, the yellow, and then into the corner on the purple. And that is where I like to start. And I'm just going to pull my thread through. Hope my knot's big enough. Yes. And then it is just a matter of making a whip stitch all along this edge. And a whip stitch is simply, I'm always going to go into the yellow side first, and then the purple. And I just keep doing that all along the edge. And I am only catching the very, very tiny edge of the fabric. I'm not piercing the paper. I might nick the paper a little bit, but I am not piercing it. And I'm making sure I give it a nice tug after each stitch. My stitches aren't terribly close together. You can do them whatever width you like. You just want enough that it's going to hold it together. And I'm going all the way until I get to the other corner. So I'm almost there. And again, corner and corner, and pull that through. So keeping my thread still in the needle and still attached to the piece, you can see when I open it up that you really can't see the stitching. So now I'm going to grab the next petal, and my needle left off here at this corner, so I'm going to now sew along this edge of the center with a new petal. Going back through that corner on the yellow and now through the purple corner of the new petal. And again, just continue whip stitching all along the edge. Again, making sure that I end going right through those corners. Okay, now I have two petals attached. I'm going to continue that way, attaching a petal to the center until I have finished all the way around. All right, I have sewn all the petals to the center. Now the petals are all not sewn together to themselves or to their neighboring petal. They're only attached to the center. It's still not time yet to take out the center cardboard, little template. And I still have my needle threaded with my silk thread right where I left off with the last petal there. And now that's why you want cardstock, so that it has enough body but at the same time is somewhat flexible. So I am just putting these two petals together. Here, my thread ended right here. And again, now I'm going through the corners of the purple and the purple, the two petals, and I'm sewing that side. Matter of fact, I'm going to do that again to really hold that in place. There we go. And I'm just going to whip stitch right along this edge. Now as I come to this last one, I am going to knot my thread a little bit, do a couple extra stitches there on the edge, but I'm not going to cut my thread. I just want to make sure that it's nice and secure and not getting caught in the other petals. All right, now we have this edge sewn together. We need to move on to the next one. And what I usually do, as long as I have thread, is just run my thread in a big running stitch just along the back to get over to the next petal. When you're doing an entire quilt of grandmother's flower garden blocks, like a whole bunch of these together, then there are ways that you can sort of zigzag your way across and not have to be kind of going through other petals to get to the next petal. But because we're just doing one flower for our block, we're doing it this way. So these are the next two that I am sewing together. And again, I am bringing that up through the corner of the hexie on top and going through the corner of the hexie on the bottom. And try not to get tangled in all the petals. I do like to sometimes go twice through the corners just to really give it a little extra oomph. And I'm going to continue in the same manner until I have all the petals sewn together. As you come to the end of thread, if you haven't finished sewing yet, that's perfectly fine. Just knot it off and thread a new piece and keep on going. All right, I have sewn all the petals together. It is one solid flower now. At this point, I can take out this center cardboard, not the center itself, just the cardboard. So I'm going to go ahead and, I only have my big scissors here, but I'm going to go ahead and snip one of these basting threads. Let's get a nice big one here. And I will use my sewing needle. It's a little bigger. I'm using the blunt end of it, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull my silk thread. I still have somewhere, here we go. I still have my silk threaded into my straw needle, and it's still attached because I'm going to be appliquing, so I might as well just continue along. But getting back to our center piece here, I'm just going through and pulling that basting thread right out. This one's not coming out because it has the knot on the other side. So we'll pull that from this side. And it's quite simple to just pop that out. And there we have it. So now do not remove these outer papers. They are holding the flower together. We'll start to take those out once the petal is sewn down. And then in the end, I'll show you how you have to wiggle out that last one. So let's grab our center fabric, which I have cut as a 7-inch square from my background fabric. All right, so I am just positioning my flower. It's a pretty busy block. I'm positioning my flower in the center of the block. And again, I've cut this about 7 inches. It's going to get trimmed down in the end to 6.5 inches square, but I want to give a little leeway in case, you know, my flower ends up a little off-centered or whatnot. So doing my best to center it. I should have some flat edges of the petals along 2 sides, and then the pointy parts along the other. I mean, I guess you could do it kind of askew, but I'm not going to. So having positioned that down, I am going to go ahead and pin that in place. Stick a pin right there in the center. And then for some extra assurance, I'm going to pin one of these petals as well. All right, here is my needle, all threaded still with the silk thread. I ended at this seam here. And now I am just going to applique the flower to the background. And I am doing that with just a very small little, essentially, it's like a whip stitch, just where I go into the background fabric, and then I'm going to come up onto the petal. And again, I am not catching the paper, our little paper template in there. I'm just catching the edge of the fabric. You could applique it on with a decorative stitch using embroidery thread. That would work as well. Be quite nice, actually. A little buttonhole stitch using embroidery thread would be lovely. Perhaps I will do a tutorial using my pink flower for something like that. But for this, I am just doing traditional applique. This is the same type of stitch I use when I'm hand stitching down my binding. I'm going to go ahead and remove that pin now that I have 2 edges down, just checking my positioning there. Still looks good. Pin over there. Hopefully I won't stick myself too many times. All right, I have these three petals sewn down. I'm going to take the pin out of the center there. Let's go ahead and take the basting stitch, making sure I'm taking it out only out of the ones that are fully stitched down. All right, now, since these 3 here have been released, I'm just going to reach in, you can see that, and pull the paper out. There's 1. 2. And 3. So I also like to just reach in there and press all those down again. Okay. Now I'm ready to rethread my needle because I finished off that thread of silk, and I'm going to stitch along this one, then probably pop that one out, this one, pop that one out, and then I'm going to come back and I'll show you how to get out that very last paper. I've stopped with just the one side not sewn, and I've wriggled my fingers in that tiny little space, freed up the paper from the edges of the purple fabric, and then you have to kind of fold it a little bit to wrangle it out of there. Worst case scenario is you end up really damaging the paper, but it's just a piece of paper, well, cardstock, and it's fine. You can use them over again, but if one of them doesn't make it out, then it's not the end of the world. And once you have wrangled that paper out, then you stitch down that last little edge. Now, I have an alternative to getting those papers out if you don't want to do this method. And that is simply that you applique the entire thing with all the papers in there, and then you very carefully cut a slit in the back of your fabric. You pull the backing fabric away from your hexagon, snip a little piece. You can, make it wide enough that you can easily get in there to get the papers out. Free up all the papers, and you can whip stitch that closed. Once you quilt your quilt, it'll all be mushed together in there anyway. But that is our block. Now that we have the center block appliqued on, now we're going to go ahead and square up the block. So we started with a background square that was 7 inches, and we need to trim it down to 6.5. But of course, we would like to center things. All right, there we go, all trimmed up. Now, going to get the frame pieces and put it all together. Here is our finished block. So I'm very excited. The musical notes with the jazzy purple fabric and the swirly yellow-orange, I think makes for a very, very fun block. If you have made it to the end of this video, that's fantastic. I know this block is a little bit of a doozy, and if you're not into hand quilting, hand piecing, hand work at all, then this block you may be thinking is not for you. So I have good news. One, it's one block. You could, if you were very, very careful, machine sew all the way around the hexagon flower. We'll use this one as a sample here. Just catching the edge of the fabric, and then do the slit on the back of the fabric square and take out the papers. You'll want to make sure that you give your flower a good press beforehand. Make sure you do that before you applique it by machine or by hand onto there. The other thing is that one of the finish settings only uses 11 blocks. So if you really hate this block, I get it. English paper piecing is not for everyone, but I would give it a try. It's really fun. And truth be told, it's a whole lot easier to make an entire quilt with hexagons than it is to applique it on. I use the method of taking the papers out as I went rather than slitting the back, in part because I have been working on my random rail fence, and I have been appliquing individual hexagons onto each of those, and I can't cut the back. It's my quilt. So that is in part why I started with that method rather than doing the slit in the back. But you can do the slit in the back, whether it's hand appliqued or machine appliqued. Do know that if you machine applique it on there, you're going to have to rip out those papers because the machine needle will have gone through them. It won't hurt them. It's just you may not be able to reuse them. Most of mine I am able to reuse. I think you can see, have some holes poked in from the basting, but I can easily use them 3, 4, 5 times, you know, until they really get kind of wrinkly, crinkly. So keep that in mind. Do not get discouraged if this block frustrated you. I promise that next week's block is super simple. Really it is. And rectangles. It'll be great. If you have not already subscribed to my newsletter in order to get the instructions emailed to you each week, then there is a link in the description below where you can sign up for the newsletter. While this series is ongoing, so anytime before May 1st, 2004, you will get caught up with the instructions that have already gone out, and then you'll be on the weekly, as they come out, sequence of things. If you join the mailing list after May 1st, then you will be starting afresh, and each week you will get a new set of lessons. So join before May 1st if you can. Be all caught up. In the end, I'm going to show you at least 3 different ways that you can set these blocks, including one that only uses 11. And I have an alternative one as a additional 12th block as well, if you really hate English paper piecing. But remember, this series is all about trying different kinds of techniques and experimenting with things. That's how you learn. So give English paper piecing a try. And until next week, I'm Stacy with Stacy Creates Stuff. Bye.